afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Daily Deuce. I'm Gary Graves from just outside Louisville, Kentucky. And in Maryland, my good friend, longtime friend and esteemed colleague and coach, John Webster. John, how are you doing today?
Hey, Gary, doing real good, man. Hope everybody else is doing great. Another exciting week in sports, another questionable week in sports, and we'll get into that in a second. But before we move forward, without any further ado, we'd be remiss if we didn't say hey to the main man, John Pitt. What's going on, John?
Not much, man. I'm feeling great after seeing San Francisco fall last night. The NFC is looking very winnable for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm feeling great, man.
Oh yeah, this man. There's so much to unpack with the NFL, but unfortunately, we're going to have to really talk about the elephant in the room in the DC area. If you're a fan of the burgundy and gold, we'll get to that in a second. But I have to note today, John, is just like probably the best day for a sports fan. Why? We have all four major league sports in session at the same time. Now, for those of us in sports journalism, it's also one of the worst days in terms of demand because you got all four going. You still got college. You got a college football game tonight, but hey, from a fan standpoint, you can't get any better than this. And if you're a hockey fan, you're loving it because every hockey team is playing tonight. I don't even know how they do that. They don't even do that on opening night. I mean, even in the NBA, I think there are only two games, and and everything more or less gets cranked up in earnest tomorrow. But we have no shortage of topics now with all four sports going, and including college football and then college basketball in another 2 weeks. Oh man, you gotta love it, right, John?
Hey, man, it's a fun time of the year. You got hockey already going. The NBA starts tonight. You got college football. You got pro football. You got a little bit of everything going on right now. You got soccer leagues going on all over the place. I know Pitt's a big soccer fan. You can pick your pick. I mean, if you really want to get into it, you got pro wrestling 2 or 3 nights a week, so you can watch that too. You got
This is
it's a
sports,
it's a
sports.
smorgasbord. What's the word? It's a smorgasbord of opportunities with viewing options for sports.
Yeah, viewing options. But you know how much I love pro wrestling because it's entertainment, emphasis on entertainment. Um, People who probably, in fact, it's so much entertainment that you tell any pro wrestling fan about college wrestling that they probably would, oh, that's not real wrestling because it has happened, and it probably would happen if you went to a WWE event. But be that as it may, John, I don't know how many people called in to work sick on Monday morning in the DMV as they describe it. Um, is something going on with that football team? I kind of watched the game in passing because I was more or less trying to get my college basketball done, and Sunday is just the day after for college football, so I was just kind of paying attention to the games more or less in passing. But all I have to say, John, is 14-7 to the bottom feeding New York Giants. Every time I looked up at the screen and I saw that score, and I kept thinking, they got to score, and they didn't. And Magic Johnson and everybody else who's a Washington fan has a right to be upset about it from that, because that's just, in the NFL, that's just unacceptable. I'm sorry. I mean, it's one thing if you just go out and get your brains beat in, but that was a winnable game from what I could see, and they didn't even muster up enough to make it competitive.
Well, rough game for them. 7 points they got came on like a 27-yard drive after a punt that the New York Giants punter fumbled the punt. Again, too many explosive plays given up by the defense. I will say this for the Giants. Saquon Barkley, he does make a difference in that team. They played Buffalo tight. They should have beat Buffalo. I said that last week. And he made a difference on Sunday. I think he's more of a difference maker than Daniel Jones, to be honest with you. They just the first half, they just weren't there. They did some things a little bit different in the second half. Gary, I tell you this, and normally what we do, we go through each team of the NFC East. There's so much vitriol in this area today and yesterday. Well, this week because of the Commanders loss. Excuse me, Gary. Excuse me, Pitt. Because of the Commanders loss. I want to do something a little different. Now, maybe what we can do, Gary, at the end, after we go through this piece, maybe we'll just say a little bit about the Cowboys and the Eagles, just a little bit. But Gary, I tell you what I want to do. I've actually had people send to you and I emails, text messages with questions they would like for you and I to answer about the Commanders today. I think we should go ahead and hear these questions and take a stab at it. What do you think?
I'd love it because, it's one thing for us to have our own echo chamber about the Washington football team, but let's just hear what others have to say or what they're thinking. So fire away.
It's got to be pretty serious, Gary. I'm putting my glasses on so I can see what's going on here. It's got to be pretty serious. Joe from D.C. How long will Ron Rivera last? Will he make it to the end of the season? I'll let you hit it first, Gary.
At this point, John, when you see the downward trajectory, and that's the only way you can really describe it, Magic Johnson, he might be a quote unquote minority owner, but he's got the ear. He's hearing the fans, and he's probably got the ear of Josh Harris. You're at a point now in the season where it's kind of like put up or shut up. Like, okay, what are they? 3-4 now or something like that? Okay,
exactly.
Yeah, they're only a game under 500, but they've lost, what is it, 3 or 4, and they've just looked horrid in those losses. Or is it 4? Was it 4 or 5?
They're 3-4. They play 7 games.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like okay. So what? It's like they've lost.
You're right, because they started 2-0.
That's right.
And then after 2-0, they've 4 of the last 5 they lost.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it's for like those first 3 losses, everybody was heaping on the defense, rightfully so. They right themselves against Atlanta, and then just go out and lay an egg offensively this time around. I can't really say anything bad about the defense. Is that they more or less kept them in the game, even with the explosive plays that you're talking about. The Giants probably should have scored more than they did, and such. But so I say you got to give a hand to the defense on that. This is not about Jack Del Rio at this point. This is really about Ron Rivera. And my answer is, if it keeps going like this, they're going to make a change. They're going to have to make a change because I think he's on the cusp of losing this team if he hasn't lost it already. Because again, that was a game that could have, got their heads above water. And again, watching that game in passing and just watching them struggle, I'll say it like this, John. It seemed like every time I looked up at the screen, they were getting ready to punt. You can tell me if that's accurate or not, and we'll go from there. But they just look like a team that's just going in the wrong direction. And at this point, they're not even halfway through the season, and things are just not looking good, even with all that talent that they should be getting a lot more out of. I just don't know. The money you spent on bringing Eric Bieniemy to Washington and whatever culture change we thought was there, it's not there. I'm not blaming Bieniemy. I mean, I'm just blaming a culture right now with that team that, I think that falls on the coach. And maybe we're looking at something where Bieniemy becomes the coach in the interim. I'll throw that one out there.
So your answer is, Gary, he may not make it through the season. Is that your
No, I
answer?
don't think this was a make or break season for him regardless. And he's more break than make.
I think he makes it through the season. To make a change right now would just be pointless because whoever they change to is not going to keep the job. So I think he stays until the end of the season. Now, the interesting piece that I will say, and we got to move on to the next question. He makes it to the end of the season. I don't think he comes back next year. Two candidates that I see already in my mind that will make a great coach for the Washington Commanders. One, Mike Tomlin. Don't think he will continue being at Pittsburgh, but hear me out, Gary. It's going to be hard to get him, but I think he can turn this team around. Be very hard to get him. But Pittsburgh coaches do not go anywhere else when they finish. They retire. Chuck Noll retired, never coached anywhere else. Bill Cowher retired, never coached anywhere else. Mike Tomlin. And I've always liked Tomlin, but you look at what he's doing now with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, I would venture to say, has as much or less talent than Washington. And what he is doing with them and what he did with them last year, I've always loved the guy. I've always loved him. He gets them ready. My second choice. I'll say two words. Coach Khaki. Jim Harbaugh. And this is what I'll say. You're going to make a change, then doggone it, you make a change and you swing for a home run. Go for it. Harbaugh is not coming back to Michigan next year. Not. Even before this investigation, he's not coming back. Him and the athletic director don't get along. I know, Gary, you know more about that than I do, but they don't get along. Harbaugh's got to have it his way. He wants to be somewhere where he can build. What better place to build? What better place to be than D.C.? He's going to have Josh Harris with a good ownership group. Look at his track record. San Jose State, he won. San Jose State, they're known for track and field. He won in football at San Jose State. He went to Stanford. He won. Then he went to the Rose Bowl. They haven't been in a Rose Bowl since Jim Plunkett. He went to San Francisco. They went to the Super Bowl. He went to Michigan. They're winning. They didn't beat Ohio State the last 2 years. Those are my choices right there.
John, as out there as they might sound at first glance, see, here's the thing about Tomlin. And I heard this, the way I heard it described this morning on ESPN is, I can't remember who, but he said, the Steelers have Tomlined their way into second place in the AFC North, which it's like I look at it, it's like they're only a half game behind the Ravens. The fact that the Ravens are in first place is kind of amazing too, considering how they've sputtered until Sunday. Again, they went and dropped the hammer on the Detroit Lions, but Pittsburgh somehow, with quarterback injuries, and again, what you said, a fall off in talent, equal to, if not less than Washington, and he's got them in the hunt. The thing about Tomlin, I just don't think, if he gets close to 500, even if he finishes with a losing record, let's just say 8-9 or 7-10, I still think he comes back because Pittsburgh is a team that builds through the draft. He has good talent coordinators. He's a good developer of talent. They get the coaches in there to develop what they have. And I'm not ready to give up on Pickett just yet. I think, yeah, he'd be a very interesting choice. I don't know, John, with what you said about Noel and Cowher never coaching anywhere again. I think that pattern would probably hold with Tomlin because he's been there so long. And I can't see him really shifting his attention to another team at any point. I think he's at a point where he can pretty much rest on his laurels, maybe go into television or something like that if he ever leaves Pittsburgh, because I just don't think Pittsburgh would fire him. And I think he's too proud and too determined to quit. I didn't say stubborn. I said proud and determined to make it work, because every time we've counted Pittsburgh out, he has them competitive and just thinking, he won in spite of what he had.
All right.
Coach Kaki, I say, why not? I hadn't thought about him. I mean, you're right. He's not coming back to Michigan, but yeah, he's probably as good as any choice that's out there right now.
Okay, let's go to question 2. This is from Vince from Northwest. He's got 2 questions, so we're going to maybe have to pick up the pace a little bit, Gary. Look here. 3 Super Bowl wins for the Washington franchise were based on a strong offensive line. There were 3 different QBs and running backs and a variety of wide receivers when they won these Super Bowls. The offensive line was the constant. Do you think the Commanders will start making the offensive line a priority?
They need to, yes. They need to, because if you've got your future invested in Sam Howell, if that's going to be your quarterback of the future, and I do think he is, put a line in front of him that will protect him and keep him upright. I don't even know where they rank in sacks right now, but every time that I've watched Washington, he seems to be getting creamed, and that's just unacceptable. When you have a history and tradition with the Hogs.
My answer to this, Vince, I hope they do return to that, because the NFC East is ground and pound. It's grinded out football. All teams in the NFC East are able to run that pigskin and get a first down on the ground. You got to go back to that ground and pound. You got to get back to it. Before I go to the second question, I'll just go back and say this about the 2 coaches I said of the future. They're ground and pound coaches. Nothing pretty about what they do. We just go and get it done. So yes, I hope they do return to that. Very important, because what this team in the past has been best at with Ron Rivera is the run. So Vince, I hope they go back to doing that.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Now, another question from Vince. Vince had a lot of time to do some thinking, man. He's on it.
Mm-hmm.
In-game adjustments were one of the calling cards of one Joe Jackson Gibbs. I would love to see the coaching staff make in-game adjustments. Wow. He's calling them out, Gary. He says, what are our thoughts? Whoa. What do you think?
I agree. Again, that's the problem. At some point, as much as you want to stay committed to whatever philosophy you go into a game, with that, you can only take what the opposition gives you. And if it ain't working at halftime, and you still, within reach, even if you're leading and it's a close game or something, and you see a trend that's developing, you adjust so it doesn't become a pattern. So yeah, that's a problem. That's one of the biggest problems. They do not adjust. They don't figure out a way to maybe, like you said, ground and pound more, to maybe establish the line of scrimmage. And again, I harken back to what you just said with the last question about the offensive line. Joe Bugle's philosophy was always, we're going to run the ball. We're going to keep pounding the ball, with Riggins. They did it with a number of backs, Kelvin Bryant and George Rogers as well, and Timmy Smith. Let's not forget that. So those
and John Riggins.
Right.
John Riggins.
Oh, yeah, that's why I mentioned Riggo, with in Super Bowl 17. The thing, just so I don't belabor the point on that. Yeah, they need somebody upstairs that can say, this is what we got to do. I mean, you've got iPads, you've got printouts and everything else. Somebody needs to look at something and say, yeah, we need to adjust.
Very
And
good.
maybe you need to have the enemy up in the press box.
Ooh, that's something to think about there, Gary Graves. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question. Next question. You're going to love this one, Gary. This comes from Eli from the Meadowlands. Our dear friend, Eli White, who gives a preview of the New York Giants. He wants to chime in on what the Commanders need to do. A comment from the Giants on what the Commanders need to do. You got to love it. You got to love it.
Yeah. When you
Here
mentioned
goes
his name,
Eli's
I just
question.
couldn't, I can't stop snickering because I already kind of know where this is going.
He says, what needs to change in order for the Commanders to achieve success? Change coaches, make trades, sign free agents.
All of the above. But I think again, you know, again, another comment I saw in a thread somewhere about, how can you really change, what is it? How can you expect clean dishes if you keep using the same old dirty rags? Which I thought was just a great way to describe what's going on with Washington. You gotta, I'm telling you, you have to make some changes. You have to clean house, even if it means cleaning house and living with, more losses maybe in the next year or so toward building something. This team is flatlined, John. I mean, it's. I forgot what your prediction was, for how many wins, but this team is flatlining. In fact, they're going downhill.
They're
So why not?
struggling. They're struggling. I'm still waiting for that Rivera running winning streak. Everywhere he goes, he gets a winning streak of 4 or 5 games. I'm still thinking it's going to happen, Gary. But then again, I still believe in Santa Claus and
No,
there's going to be
no, you don't.
Money underneath my pillow for a lost tooth. So there's a lot of things I still believe in life.
Yeah, you don't, John. Don't say that. Don't say that, because somebody's going to be knocking at your door asking for your man card before this podcast is over. I understand about wanting to maintain just some childish memories, or childhood memories rather, but it's time to put away childish things, John.
Well,
but
what I'll
hey,
say,
you're still my friend.
They will change coach. Eli, they're going to change coach at the end of the year. Trades, you got to be in the NFL. You got to be very calculated with the trades. Trades don't always work in the NFL. Signing free agents doesn't always work. But what will work? Strong draft. Very strong draft. Get some good players in the draft. Look at where you're sitting in the draft and realize, if I'm sitting at second or third, the player I need, do I need to sit at second or third, or can I trade back, get a few more picks and go forward? That's what they need to do. The coach is going to, first thing, well, here's what I'll say. Even before the coach, you need to clean house. You need to get a president of operations, a general manager, and then you need to get a coach. They need to start all over. It'll happen next year. Eli, thanks for the comments. And Eli, good luck to the Giants, my friend.
Yeah. And John, to your one point, I do think trades work in the NFL. I do think the Eagles trade with the Titans for Kevin Byard yesterday is one that really does. I think it can pay off for them. For especially for what they need. As good as they looked, I think you need another piece right now.
Fair statement. Fair statement. I can see that.
But to your point, the draft I think is still the best way. You have to be patient. The thing about teams, a lot of teams still aren't that patient with draft choices, especially at skill positions. They're looking for a payoff, a quick payoff within 2 or 3 years, as they should. With quarterbacks, unfortunately, that patience just isn't there. I think in some cases they throw them in maybe a little too soon. I think Sam Howell probably should have gone in last season. Having said that, I think they waited a little late, because they had a playoff berth within reach, and maybe a change could have pushed them over the top.
Here's the last question we have. This is from a dear friend of mine. I just call him retired. One of the best coaches, basketball coaches, well, just period coaches that I know. So here's his question. I'll just call him retired. Great guy. Do you ever get the feeling that the commander system may be more important to the coaches over everything else?
Dear retired, you make an interesting point. And I guess I go back to what I said earlier about how committed these coaches are to a strategy going into the game. They're so dug into it that they don't want to admit to themselves that it's a mistake and that some changes need to be made. So I'm going to say, yeah, they're too set in their ways. That could include the offensive coordinator. I don't. Again, you just don't know how much influence he has, or how much Rivera listens to him, or how much freedom he supposedly gives him in terms of calling plays. But yeah, I agree with that statement wholeheartedly.
I'm going to answer this as quickly as I can because now we got to move on to the next topic. But let me answer as quickly as I can. I agree that these coaches get caught up in their own system and they don't want to change sometimes for an ego reason, because if they switch away from what they do and they become successful with something else, they think they're not needed anymore. I'm going to give you a quick scenario and a comparison of Eric Bieniemy and another coach we talked about on these questions, Joe Jackson Gibbs. Joe Gibbs came to the Washington franchise in 1981 as the head football coach. Where did he come from? The San Diego Chargers, where he was the offensive coordinator. There in San Diego, he had what was called Air Coryell, great offense, tremendous offense. But he had Dan Fouts as a quarterback, Kellen Winslow, Hall of Fame as a tight end, Charlie Joyner, Hall of Fame as a tight end, and John Jefferson, who goes down as one of the greatest receivers in San Diego Charger history. Flash forward to the next season, he comes to the Washington team. He has Joe Theismann as a quarterback. He has Rich Castor, an old Rich Castor, as his tight end. He has Art Monk as a wide receiver, a second-year Art Monk, not the polished Art Monk that we see 2 or 3 years later. My point, Joe Gibbs lost 5 straight games trying to instill the offense of San Diego. They were 0-5. What Joe Gibbs realized, the talent base that he had was based upon a running game. It's the NFC East. He switched over. He forgot what he did. He put his ego aside. They started the season 0-5. They ended up 8-8. The man won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. Left unsaid. Nothing else needs to be said. Move forward to Eric Bieniemy. I think Eric Bieniemy is a very good offensive coordinator. I think he has a lot of talent, but he does remind me of Joe Gibbs. Why? Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City has the best quarterback in the NFL right now, Patrick Mahomes. He has the best tight end in the NFL right now, Travis Kelce. What he has now, he has Sam Howell, who is a quarterback with the Washington franchise, and he has Logan Thomas as his tight end. Nothing wrong with those players, but they're not Travis Kelce and they're not Patrick Mahomes. Adjust your offense to fit what you have. Ground and pound it. More slant passes, more short patterns. Everybody's going to blitz you every play because they know your line can't hold up to the pass protection. What's the easiest way for a lineman to do? Go forward on run blocking. I'm not a football coach, not a football player. Gary Graves has done both. Ask him to verify what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're right.
Go with your strong point. Go with your strong point. Concentrate on the run. Concentrate on short passes. The long passes will open up and you'll get opportunities. Establish your run. You're playing it in the NFC East, not the AFC West. Similar situations for Bieniemy and Joe Gibbs.
Yeah. See, the thing I always say, the thing about a good coach is you have to be I don't want to say smart enough because I don't want to say any coach is dumb, but you have to be open enough to tailor your system to the personnel that you have, because sometimes you have guys that just are not going to do it necessarily your way, so you kind of have to change. You have to change your system to suit them and get the most out of them. And I always think about Brian Robinson as as an example where you've got a pounded back that I feel like is being underutilized for whatever reason, because you're so committed to to these intermediate to long passes or whatever, and maybe using him as a blocker and maybe using him as a decoy, for lack of a better word. And I feel like you've got to play smash mouth football in the NFC East. You probably have to do it in every division except, as you said, the AFC West, and that's the problem. Yeah, when they picked up the enemy, I really thought it's like, okay, he's the kind of guy I think that can get more out of Robinson. In fact, all of those backs, and they seem to be underutilized, and a lot of that is kind of dictated by the situation that that you're in. You fall behind, and you try to get back in it with with the pass. But at the outset, if you're committed, to trying to move the ball, pound it in there, maybe come back with a pass or something like that on second down, maybe throw on an off down or something. But to move the ball, you got to figure out a way to stay on schedule with where you want to be on second and third down. And that's what I'm not seeing with this team. And they're not adjusting. They're still committed to the same old, same old.
Gary, these have been all great questions, all great comments. We got to move on now. Thank you all for these comments. Gary, take us to the next topic.
Oh, man. Okay, let's see. College. Well, wait a minute. Let's. How about baseball, John? Let's talk about baseball for a few minutes, because we have a situation here. We have two situations. First of all, Game 7. They always say the best two words in sports. Game 7 between Philadelphia and Arizona tonight. The Diamondbacks, every time you count them out, they find a way to get it done. They have a chance to win on the road in Philly, which is a tough environment. And if you watch last night's game, for them to not only win, but win in that loud environment is impressive. In fact, a couple of times that they've been able to win in a loud environment. Well, I should say not a couple times. I'll say last night, because I was thinking when they were in Arizona, yeah, they had the home crowd behind them. But I don't, it's such a toss up in Game 7. I don't know whether to give the Phillies the edge or not. I do think they probably will win it just because of how this series has gone, where it's been back and forth. And we all knew it was going to be a best 2 out of 3 anyway. Once they tied, once they made up that that deficit and tied the series. Now, over in the American League, the Texas Rangers just basically blew out the Astros these last 2 games. Last night was just, I think they had 10 hits, and they had 10 hits in the 5th inning, and ultimately finished with 11 runs and won all 4 games on the road. We can talk about how bad the Astros have been at home in the playoffs, how bad they've been at home during the regular season. I think you pointed out they were 40-46 at home. That ain't going to get it done when especially if you're a 100-game winner. Yeah, you might have nerves of steel, away from Minute Maid Park, but man, yeah, I mean, you gotta do something at home. And because of that, that's why the Washington Nationals have a World Series title, because they couldn't hold serve at home. And I don't know what you do with Houston at this point. I don't know if they've hit a wall, but they got to figure out something to do with that pitching staff, because the hitting is there, not necessarily these two games, but yeah, the pitching, they got to do something about that going forward. I don't know who they get if Dusty Baker ultimately steps down as manager, as appears to be the case. But that's where I think you've got to start.
Well, I think congratulations that goes out to the Texas Rangers. As I've said back when they're playing the Orioles, they are professional hitters. I mean, you look at that lineup, you got Aldis Garcia, you got Corey Seager, you got Evan Carter, you got Jonah Heim, I mean, you just got hitters on top of hitters. I mean, they're unbelievable. They're a very good team, very good team. As far as Houston, I mean, come on, 5 out of 7 years they've been to a World Series. I got nothing but respect for them. Class organization. They do a great job. And if this was Dusty Baker's last game as a manager, as I said to Dante earlier today, he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. My goodness, the man has had a wonderful career. He played for the Dodgers, he played for the Atlanta Braves and a couple other teams, I think. He's managed the San Francisco Giants. He's managed the Chicago Cubs. He's managed the Cincinnati Reds. He's managed the Washington Nationals. He has managed the Houston Astros. And he's had success everywhere he's been. He's been to a World Series. He's won a World Series. Hey, man. Words can't say what I think about Dusty Baker. Class act, great guy, and a great human being. So, hey, nothing but respect. They came up short. As Dusty Baker said, they have nothing to be ashamed of. Look at that resume they have. Unbelievable resume. Just unbelievable.
Yeah. And they lost to a team with a great manager in Bruce Bochy. Before we went on, I was talking about what I always considered him one of the most underrated managers out there, for the kind of record that he has. I think it was four World Series appearances and 3 victories, and had pretty much a dynasty in San Francisco where they won all the even years, 2010, 2012, 2014. You really, with good talent, but also they got more out of some of the talent. They've got at least 3 Hall of Famers out there off that team. I think Mad Bum is a potential. Buster Posey, was one. But what he's done with Texas, and like you said, they're professional hitters, but that's a gutty pitching staff. Case in point was Game 7, where, much like we recall with Max Scherzer when he was in Washington and pitched Game 7 against the Astros, where all you needed to do was just hold the line, get 3 or 4 innings out of him, keep the game from getting out of hand. Luckily, he got run support, and then you take him out and bring in a bullpen that's just able to get 2 or 3 innings out of guys. Again, in this day and age, it's about piecing together a win, and that's what they've got. No matter who they face in the World Series, I feel like it's kind of a toss up, because if it's Arizona, they're kind of the same kind of team. Philly, you just have to shut down that murderer's row of a top of the lineup. With Harper and Schwarber and Trey Turner, and there's probably another one I'm forgetting somewhere. So
Marsh.
Yeah, oh yeah. So that's the main thing. But if any team can do it, I think the Texas Rangers can. And I'm going to add this question, John, for you, because they used to be the Washington Senators. Do you think any Washingtonians should root for the Texas Rangers?
People can do what they want, but my respectful suggestion is they should root for the Philadelphia National Phillies.
I would agree, because
you have Bryce Harper, you have Trey Turner, you have Schwarber.
Yeah. That's more recent. And I mean, the Rangers have been there for 50 years. Broke my heart in 1971 when they lost. They have more of a history there in Texas than they did here. And it would be great if they won, because they've had some down years, but they also had years with Ron Washington as manager where they were on the cusp. And they just ran up against 2 good teams, the Giants and the St. Louis Cardinals. But the Phillies, I think I said this early on, they still look like the team of destiny, even though they look a little wobbly right now.
It's going to be interesting tonight.
Yep.
I'm rooting for the Phillies.
Yep.
Hands down,
Yeah.
I'm rooting for the Phillies. And then we go from there. We'll have something to talk about next week. We'll have a World Series, Gary.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So let's talk about NCAA football. Man, where to start? Well, Georgia's coming off a bye this week. They're facing Florida in Jacksonville, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, as it's called. Um, they've had a little time to kind of rest and hopefully figure out what they're going to do without Brock Bowers for the foreseeable future. But John, I'm going to say this: we're coming up on that time where the college football playoff rankings are but a week away. And the question now is, if you're Georgia or any of the top four schools, do you start? It's not just do you start or do you think about staying unbeaten, but do you start thinking about running up the score to improve your seeding?
Well, I'll say this tongue in cheek. That's not good sportsmanship, Gary. But anyway, I'll say right now, the biggest thing they all have to do is continue to win. I think Lou Holtz said it best, or not just Lou Holtz, a lot of coaches say it. The rankings will take care of themselves as long as we do what we're supposed to do. So before you start thinking about running the score up on the Sisters of the Poor or whatever, you got to win the game. And I think everything has to take care of itself. Example, like Ohio State. Ohio State is not really impressive, but guess what? They're very good. They win, and they continue to move up the rankings.
Yeah.
Penn State lost to them, so that means they dropped down. You're going to have some more. You're going to have some more. Give me 5 of those teams, Gary. You got Georgia. You got Michigan. Who else you got in there? What else you got? Georgia, Michigan,
Ohio State.
Ohio State.
And I'm trying to let's see. Well, Oklahoma's unbeaten too, right?
Oklahoma's unbeaten. Yeah.
So, and I'm trying to think of a good one-loss team. Maybe even Alabama.
Alabama.
Yeah, because they're starting to find their game with Jalen Milroe
and my point is, you look at Alabama. They aren't impressive. This isn't Alabama machine this year. They win and they're good, but they are doing the hamstring. They're matriculating. They're just moving. Each week they're just winning. They were losing 20-7 to Tennessee at halftime. They won 34-20. All they're doing is winning, and that's what I'm talking about. Don't worry about running the score up. Worry about winning. The other part will take care of itself. Like Ohio State and Michigan, that's going to take care of itself on November, what is that, 19th or 18th? That's going to take care of itself when they play in Ann Arbor.
Oh, yeah, that one, yeah.
And Gary, quiet is kept. Part of that Michigan scenario may be taken care of, if not this week, next week, because Michigan has to go to Happy Valley to play Penn State at nighttime. And that's going to be rough. So that's what I'm saying.
But I'm really starting to lose faith in Penn State. And I keep thinking they had chances against Ohio State, to make it a game. And every time I start to think, they could really shake up the order, they just fall short. And I don't know how to describe that. It's, again, it's in college football, well, just like in any sport, but particularly in college football, that line is so delicate, between winning and losing a game. And we've seen that happen with Colorado. We've seen it happen with Notre Dame. And I'm trying to think of another team who was really close. Oh, let's think about that. What happened with Miami, with the way that they lost that game. All they had to do was take a knee. And I guess they thought, they could take a few more seconds off the clock and the guy fumbles and they couldn't defend after that. But the reason why I ask about what teams do now, because we're at that point in the season where it's about style points. It's not just about the AP rankings, to put a plug in for my my company, my employer, but all of those algorithms and figures that go into determining the playoff structure, and for those final 6 weeks, we're going to be talking about who moves up, who moves in. Now next year, it's an all comers event. When it expands to 8 teams, or was it maybe even 12 teams? It's like I'm probably late on the game on that, but but right now with the current structure, I'm thinking that those top 4 teams are thinking about, how do we impress the committee? And I think it's a justified thing because, right now there's no real power, no dominant team in college football. I know Georgia has won something like, what is it, 23, 24 straight or something. They're not the same Georgia team. At the same time, they are still Georgia. So, they're going to find a way to try to prove it and try to go after that three-peat, or at least get in the hunt for a three-peat.
I agree. And this is why they play the game. And this is why you and I, Gary Gray, is going to have a good time watching this play out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun. John, say something about USC and Notre Dame. Oh, okay.
Enough said.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, John, you've got an opinion. Don't let your sweatshirt speak for you. Come on, man. Tell me about where how they could figure in the mix.
They don't figure in the mix, Gary. They're not going to get to the playoff. I would like them to get to a New Year's Day bowl. I did a projection the other day just to see what the projection was for what bowl they're going to. Gary, it's so bad right now. I can't remember the name of the bowl. It's just I can't even remember it. It was ridiculous, and it was that they're playing a game on December 27th. I'm like, but again, Notre Dame has no one to blame but themselves. They had Ohio State, didn't close the deal, ran into a steamroller in Louisville. The one thing I will say for Notre Dame right now, then we got to move on to the next subject. The Ohio State loss is looking better and better each week because Ohio State continues to win. So it's looking better and better. Louisville, no harm, no disrespect, my friend. That's never going to look good.
No disrespect taken, especially since Louisville went to Pittsburgh and laid an egg last week, and then that same Pittsburgh team lost at Wake Forest. So, draw whatever conclusion from that, if you will. John, before we wrap up, let's talk about the NBA, which starts up tonight. You've got Denver against the Lakers. Let's see, Golden State, and Chris Paul going against Phoenix with Bradley Beal. These off-season additions, I don't even know where to start. I mean, what's his name? The Greek Freak. I mean, he just got $186 million in extension, I think, just this morning. So, here we are. I do think the line still forms behind Denver right now because, just because they are the defending champion. But how much does the landscape change in your view right now?
Well, Gary, let me back up and start with Phoenix. Let me give you an update with Phoenix real quick. Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal's not playing tonight. He's sitting out because of his injured back. Mm-hmm. So you just traded for him, and he's already injured. That's the first thing I'll say. Phoenix also is still a team, in my opinion, that looks to outscore everybody. I think Golden State can beat them tonight. We'll see what happens. Lakers and
Denver.
Denver tonight. My dear son Dante is loving the Lakers, but he says he does not care about the regular season. He only cares about 7-game series in the postseason and getting a championship. So I get that, but I think the Lakers will play Denver tough. I think the Lakers may end up beating Denver because these games like this, when you have your first game of the season after you won a championship, the ceremony throws you off because the ceremony is so long. You lose your momentum, you lose your intensity because you're getting your rings, you're getting your trophy, Lakers. I think the Lakers could get them tonight. I really do, and
Yeah,
we'll see.
I think so too. Again, looking down the road, the question with the Lakers is how much do you depend on Anthony Davis, not just to stay healthy, but to lead you when he's healthy, because it appears that this is going to be his team. LeBron is basically handing him the keys to the Cadillac, and is he capable of driving it? Only if he stays healthy. That's always the caveat with them. Golden State, one of the older teams. I think they made a good pickup with Chris Paul. If you use him smartly, off the bench and try to save him for the playoffs, yeah, you've got a chance. Boston and Milwaukee, I'll just say quickly about Milwaukee that with picking up Dame and then locking in Giannis, that I think you're in good shape. With a new coach, I hope he figures out how to use both of them correctly. Boston still might be the deepest team in the East, and we both agreed that we like the moves that they made in the offseason. All I'm going to say is for all the teams in the West that they say will probably challenge Denver, I still think you got to keep an eye on the East, because the East the East powers might be more set up to win a longer series. They might be deeper in the long run and figure out a way to get it done and adjust, as we always talk about.
Key for Boston is going to be Porzingis. Can you keep him healthy?
Mm-hmm.
He's been injury prone. That's a key. You're not really deep inside. It's Porzingis and Horford. You traded away Robert Williams. You traded away Marcus Smart.
Yeah.
Now you have Holiday there and as a backup guard, which is a good move. If they can stay healthy, they're going to be something to be dealt with. I think the two best teams in the East are Milwaukee and Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee, I'm seeing things now where they're comparing Lillard and Giannis to another guard and center back in the 70s by the name of Abdul-Jabbar and Oscar Robertson. A little bit early, very premature, but I understand what you're trying to do. But hey, those two they were unbelievable. They were great. So we see where it's going to go. Out West, Golden State made a good move, I think, for the regular season by getting Chris Paul. I think they may struggle in the playoffs because they're still small. They still need another big. Dwight Howard is still sitting out there. I would look at Dwight Howard. You need another big to come off the bench to help you. I don't see Denver repeating, but I see Denver changing the landscape of how the game is played. Copycat league, people now are going to go back to having a center, two forwards, two guards. I don't see a lot of the 3-guard, 4-guard alignment anymore. I think it's going to go back to the way it used to be.
Yeah. Yep. And they're going to find a center that can hit the 3 too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that's the whole thing. It's the Golden State effect. It's a 3-point league, and now you're gonna trade for guys, or ask big guys to to shoot threes. We both think that that's kind of a foolhardy strategy, especially when you can pile up enough twos to offset some threes. But again, the threes fill seats. Defense wins championships. So. Same old thing that we've been saying for years and years. But John, yeah, you're right about Boston. I agree with you that there's a lot of questions, but I still think the moves that they made, they address some needs. I dare say that losing Marcus Smart, for however erratic he was in Boston, that there was just something that he did bring to him. I hope they can figure out a way to offset his departure.
Well, it's going to be interesting. They're tipping off tonight. The rest of the league is tipping off tomorrow. My goodness, Gary Graves, we're getting ready to have a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, man! Half hour goes by way too fast, John, when we're talking sports. But hey, that's the great thing about it. We've got more on our plate than we can really eat in a half an hour. So we're gonna pause, push away from the table, and come back again next week and talk about it, the same things again. Thank goodness we have those things to talk about. Folks, watch sports. There's plenty to choose from. If you've got a TV or a phone or something, you got plenty of choices. Just watch sports. Take your mind off your everyday problems. John, take us home.
Hey, another great segment. Really enjoyed talking about everything today. That NFL conversation about the Commanders was great. Again, all the people that sent in their questions, greatly appreciate it. Keep them coming. We love it.
Yep. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, tell people about it. Sorry about that, John. I just had to plug that in.
I'm glad you did, because I would have gotten it wrong. So thank you, Gary. But everybody, enjoy some sports: football, basketball, baseball, soccer, and I also mentioned pro wrestling. You go and you enjoy whatever sport you want to. Have a great time, and we're going to see you back again real soon. Take care.